Well, hello, everybody, and thanks so much for joining us on this great summer evening. We're going to talk about Israel and Israel for women. And hopefully it will entice you to want to come to Israel with us. And so we want to tell you a little bit about Israel. We want to share with you what you're going to encounter when you're there. We're going to talk about some of the places that we'll be staying and some of the things that we'll be seeing. And then also we'll be talking about, we're going to have like a little devotional thought as well in that will really bring home one of the places that we're going to be staying. So let's get started. First of all, why should we travel to Israel? Look at that beautiful photo, and that's a photo of Jericho. It's been a few years, for quite a few years, Jericho was not open to tourists, but it's open again. And the last few years, about 3 years, it has been. And I was amazed when I went back 2 years ago and I saw the extent of the excavations that they'd done in this old city of Jericho. And seeing where the foundation of the city was and some of the things that they've unearthed. And this is just like one area of part of the excavations. But one of the things that you're going to see in Israel is actual biblical sites. Jericho is one of the oldest excavated cities of the world. It's known to go back like 4,000, 6,000 years. So it's been around for a really long time, and it's very exciting to see how they have unearthed so much there. And we're going to be seeing a lot of things like that. So one of the things is the Bible is going to come to life for you, because places that you've only read about will just jump off the page when you see them in person. Not only that, but we're going to be walking in the very places where Jesus walked, especially when we're in the Sea of Galilee area and in Jerusalem. We will be in actual places that we know the scriptures say that Jesus was in those places. And that's very exciting. And not just that, but being in Israel really does challenge your faith, and it really builds your faith. Being in a place that's talked about in the Bible, when so many people question the authenticity of the Bible, when you actually go to Israel, it's like, wow, this is real. I know it's real. I know my faith is real. Why should you go to Israel with other women, though? One of the reasons, I believe, is the camaraderie. And later, when we turn the screen on, you'll see a couple of women that were part of our group. One was with a mixed group, but two of them were with a mixed group, and one was with a group of women we took to Israel in 2018. But one of the things I think you probably felt, all of you who have been to Israel before, is the camaraderie. And it's like being able to enjoy one another's company as you're viewing all these magnificent sites, but also afterwards when you're just sitting around the dinner table and talking. And I find with a group of women, we all watch out for one another. When I'm with a group of couples, if there's not too many single people, I find that the couples just kind of go off on their own together in the evening. But when it's a group of women, everybody just kind of stays together as a group. And that's really nice. It's nice, especially knowing that maybe you're thinking of joining the group and you don't know anybody yet that's going to be part of the group. Well, I guarantee you, after the first day, you will feel like you're best friends with everybody. And let's be honest, traveling to Israel with women is way more fun than traveling with guys. It's just, there's just something about being with women that that is way more fun. So that's just 3 of the reasons. There's way more reasons to go with a group of women, but those are the 3 that I thought of. Here's a map of Israel, and in the areas of Israel, there's actually a section at the top and a section below that we won't be traveling through, but Israel is not a very large country. It's about the size of New Brunswick, or maybe I would say PEI, I don't know. It's very small. It's very travelable. However, there are a couple of mountain ranges, so you don't just go from one point to another. Sometimes you're going around and around and around in switchbacks. And so sometimes it seems like you're traveling a long time, but you could go from the top to the bottom in less than a day. We're going to be starting off in Tel Aviv. And you see the red circle there. That's the port city of Tel Aviv. And the airport is very close to Tel Aviv. So that's where we're going to start off. And then we're going to go straight to the Sea of Galilee. We're going to be staying there for 3 nights and being in the place where Jesus spent most of his ministry and most of his life. Then we'll be heading to the Dead Sea down at the bottom of the screen. And we'll talk a bit about that later. And then after that, we'll head up to Jerusalem. We always say we're heading up to Jerusalem because Jerusalem is in the mountains on Mount Zion. And it's a higher altitude, whereas the Dead Sea is the lowest place on earth. So it's very low altitude. And so we will be traveling up. In fact, you probably will feel your ears pop as we're driving up. Now, the first place we're going to stay in the Sea of Galilee is, we're going to be here for 3 nights, and it's called the Nof Ginosar Hotel. It's a beautiful spot right on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, and it's actually run by a kibbutz. So the kibbutz has an area of where the workers stay, and then there's an area of bungalows. And for our trip, we are going to be staying in the hotel area. So the kibbutz runs this hotel, and it's a lovely grounds. And in fact, you can see that photo on the top left. That's a little pathway, and I guess it's not really a dock. It's I don't know what you'd call it. It's all made of rocks, but where you can walk around right down to the end. And there's some benches there. And if you want to get up early in the morning and have your devotions, just enjoying the peace and the quiet of the lake, you can do that. And I say lake because the Sea of Galilee is not really a sea. It's called a sea, but it's very small. It's only the size of Lake Simcoe. If you're in Ontario, you know what size Lake Simcoe is, but it's not very large. And in fact, you can see when looking across there, you're looking at the hills of, I guess that's not Jordan, but it's like it is a Palestinian occupied area that you're looking at, those hills over there. But this is a very modern hotel, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. Then we're going to go drive down to the Dead Sea, and we're going to spend the afternoon there. And in the top right, you can see that there's a shoreline, and there's an area where you can go down and you can actually go into the water of the Dead Sea. You can float there. You can put mud on you. It's really a lot of fun. I'll show you some pictures later. But if you don't want to, our hotel actually has an indoor-outdoor heated Dead Sea water pool. So you can actually get the effects of the Dead Sea in a warm atmosphere by just staying in the hotel. It's a beautiful pool, and there at the back of the photo, they've got 2 really nice whirlpools. And you can actually swim outside through a little opening, and you can swim in that heated pool outside, even if the weather's cold. So it's quite a nice experience, and you'll sleep like a baby that night. There's the Dead Sea is so full of minerals and salt, of course, but it's the most, it's not just salty. There's like magnesium, bromide, quite a number of minerals that not only keep you afloat, but they're also good for your skin and your well-being. Because the Dead Sea is the lowest place on Earth, you also cannot get a sunburn because it's the most protected. It has the I guess the ozone layer or whatever is pretty thick there, and it's very protected. So, but because it's the lowest place and you're in this body of really concentrated water that has all these minerals in it, just even breathing in the salt air, the sea air, is going to be beneficial to you. And in fact, the hotel we're staying at has a really nice spa area, and you can book yourself a massage or another spa appointment. But quite a few people come and just spend a week here just for the therapeutic effects of being in the Dead Sea and then being in the treatment rooms here. So a lot of people from around the world will come and do that. It's so therapeutic. Then after we're at the Dead Sea, we're going to drive up to Jerusalem. And this is going to be our hotel for the next 4 nights, the Prima Royale. What I really love about this hotel is it's really close to the old city walls, so it's within walking distance. I was in Jerusalem, I was in Israel in January, and I think I walked back and forth to the old city about 6 times, well, the whole time we were there, because due to a number of reasons, but there was lots of opportunity to walk into the old city or walk home from the old city. So that was really nice. Very modern hotel, and it's in a residential area. And I really like this area because it's very safe. It's all working class people in really nice, well-kept apartment buildings. And we were just earlier, before we started recording, we were talking about the King David Hotel. And this is just around the corner from the King David Hotel. So it's actually a nice place to go and have coffee in the evening. This is just a map to show you the old city. So when you see the dotted line, it's kind of goes around in a square. That is the old city of Jerusalem. And back down in the bottom left corner is our hotel. So you can see how close it is to walk to. And I'm not sure if you can see my cursor here. I'm just circling the area where the Jaffa Gate is. So this here area is the Jaffa Gate, and it's a very short walk to go. Really, you could just go along here and then straight down over to our hotel. And we will be spending quite a bit of time in the old city, inside the city walls, as we visit the Western Wall, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and the Jerusalem, not the Jerusalem quarter, the Jewish quarter of the city. We'll also be in the Muslim quarter and the Christian quarter. And then this area here is called the Armenian quarter. So there's 4 areas of the city. Okay, so a typical day on tour. If you've ever been on a coach tour, you know that you start off the day with a good breakfast because you're going to be on the coach for most of the day. But in Israel, there's so many places to visit, and everything is within a real short driving distance that you will be off the coach quite a bit. However, you can leave your belongings in the coach. It's very safe. But you're going to start out with a full Israeli breakfast. And what that means is, because Israeli restaurants and hotels are kosher, it means that they cannot have milk and meat together. And in fact, they have to have separate kitchens, one for their meat dishes and one for their dairy dishes. So in the morning, we'll be having breakfast, and it will be all dairy. It will include dairy products. So lots and lots of cheeses, yogurt, fruit, vegetables, lots of salads, fish. We will have fish, but definitely no bacon, no meat, no sausages, eggs. There will be lots of eggs dishes, and great breads. So you'll have a really wide variety of things to choose from, but there will be no meat at that buffet. And then we will get on our coach. And this was actually the pastor from the church that I went with, that I led a group with in January, Pastor Martin Good from Niagara Falls, Grace Gospel Church. And this is our bus driver, our coach driver. And I don't know what happened to our guide. He just stepped away from the picture, and we didn't get him in the picture, but we will have a licensed Israeli guide along with us as well. And that was, I think that was like day 1. We were just getting ready to start the day. And so I wanted to get a photo of them before I forgot about it. When we have our lunch, we'll stop for a lunch break every day. And some days we will go into a restaurant, and other days it won't be a sit down lunch. It'll be like, go grab a falafel at a stand, or go get a sandwich or a bagel or a muffin. Especially when we are in Jerusalem, there's going to be some spots, especially in the Jewish quarter, where you can just go and have a burger if you want. You can have a sandwich, you can have falafel. There's lots of different choices, and you can have shawarma. There's lots of shawarma. But there will be some times when we do eat together as a group. And then, of course, we'll have a full dinner at night in our hotel. So I just wanted to talk to you as well about some of the highlights that you can expect to see when we are in Israel. So I've just really only told you about the hotels and what our typical day will look like. But one of the highlights, I think pretty much everybody says, is the Sea of Galilee. We will actually be on a boat. sailing on the Sea of Galilee. We'll have a little bit of a worship service. We'll have a time of devotion, a little devotional thought. And Janice Bells is here with us tonight on the Zoom call. And Janice is going to be leading us during our time in Israel. Janice is in about 3 or 4 or 5 spots. She's going to be leading us in a time of devotion. She's going to bring share some devotional thoughts with us in some of these areas. And on the Sea of Galilee will be one of those times. And we'll also have the opportunity while we're on that boat to just have a little quiet time of reflection and just thinking about your own faith. And Janice, I wondered if you wanted to jump on right now and share a little bit about what you've been thinking about something that happened on the Sea of Galilee.
Yes, by all means, I would love to. For many of us who went on the trip that I was part of in 18, this was a highlight to the trip. Very hard to explain, but very an emotional one. We went early in the morning for the boat ride. We had time of worship, as Judy mentioned, and reflection, and it just touched many of us very deeply. And yeah, you almost couldn't speak when you left for a while. It was just incredible. I guess it just impacting you that so much we grew up with or we've learned from the scriptures have all been from this part of the world where Jesus ministered and lived and called his disciples, and many other and many of the miracles were right there. So tonight, I hope, we're all probably seasoned with the word of God, and many of you have come under much teaching, so I'm not professing to really teach us anything, but just going to meditate on something I've been thinking about. So I chose for tonight for us to just spend a few minutes looking at the miracle of, when Jesus walked on the water. But it starts earlier in this. I'm looking at it from Matthew 14. The same miracle is recorded in 3 of the Gospels. And but pardon me if I'm going to read a little bit, because I just want to really get right into it where I wanted to take us, or where Jesus is taking me. So Matthew 14 starts, we see Jesus and disciples are heading to a solitary or isolated place. Jesus had just heard that John the Baptist had been brutally murdered under King Herod, and what a grief, time of grieving and deep sorrow. So we thought they would go to a solitary place. They got in the boat and they went across, but the crowds all heard about Jesus and they followed around the showers. They must have been fast walkers because this huge crowd of 5,000 men plus women and children were pretty much there when they got there. So much for the quiet time that they were hoping for, and they were plunged right into ministry that day. It's a credible day when you think of it, and looking at it happening along that great lake, where Jesus had such compassion on the crowd. He taught them, he healed. So many were there because they wanted to be healed, of course, because they recognized Jesus' power in that. And then it culminated in the great miracle of feeding all these people out of 5 little loaves and 2 fish. And how God provided that. And but then when that was over, which is never really over, hopefully it imprinted on people's hearts and minds for a very, very long time. Matthew records that Jesus told the disciples to get on the boat and head back to Capernaum, and he'd come later because he still needed that time that he'd come there for. And that's what really hit me, was that he came there to be alone with his Father. He needed it at that time. And he had this big pause, which very dramatic pause that would have been really exerting himself and all this ministry, but then still went up this mountain. And I see it as kind of a melancholy setting. If you're looking as we go along, and we maybe find spots where they will say this is where it happened. I've forgotten that part, so I'm sorry. But it's kind of cool to think. I just think kind of melancholy. Big crowds during the day, loudness, noise, the screams of joy and delight of people being healed and overcome with the joy of the provision of food. And then at the end of all that busy day, the crowds are now gone. The disciples are headed off in the boat, and Jesus now going up on the mountainside to pray, and the sun will be going down. And now it's quiet. I just say it's melancholy, but kind of cool. that Jesus still at that time, and it's funny, everybody else goes and Jesus is alone. It's pretty incredible. He's in such demand, and yet he made sure there was time for that. Then we all know that later in the night, this big storm comes up, and the Bible tells us the boat was actually tossed. I can't imagine being in that kind of storm. I don't even like when it's rocky on a boat. When we were on Galilee, as you can see in that picture, it's just so calm and so lovely. But it has been known for storms to come up in a real big hurry on that sea, coming down from the mountains. The way the winds have a unique way of taking that little lake and just turning it into like a foamed up ocean, and very frightening to be caught in it with no warning. So in the darkness and through the waves, about fourth watch of the night, was just pre-dawn, Jesus comes walking to them on water, which we've never, this is the only time we see this kind of a miracle in the scriptures. Of course, the disciples are terrified and they think Jesus is a ghost. But then I thought, well, we should never criticize them for that. They have never seen Jesus appear in this form before. So it's their best description of what they see coming before them. They think, well, it must be a ghost or an apparition. They have no idea. But Jesus, like being typically in tune with his people, he knows that they're afraid and says, the greatest words that I think you and I like to hear is, take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. So when fear grips our hearts and threatens to undo us, and push us into believing lies like they thought they saw a ghost when it wasn't, or being overwhelmed by our circumstances, we need to hear these same words from Jesus. Take courage. It's I'm here. Don't be afraid. So Peter just needed a confirmation. He heard Jesus' voice, but he just wanted to be really sure. So he asked Jesus to identify himself, and said, if it's you, like, tell me to come. And we know that he did. And Jesus said, come. I had no problem with that. You want to come to me? Come. And I love that too about Jesus. He wants us to come to him at all times, anytime. So Peter stepped out of that onto that ordinary body of water that we will be on. We're going in January. Nothing magical about that water. But he came in faith that Jesus said he could come, and he did. He stepped over the side of the boat and he walked towards Jesus for a while. And then we know that he started to doubt. He saw the wind. Interesting, he said he saw the wind. He saw the effects of the wind, or he felt it, and he just doubted he could do it. And so instantly he starts to fall. But it's a wonderful account where Jesus reaches out and rescues Peter when he says, save me. And that's so reassuring, that time and time again, if we fully take Jesus at his word and follow through, he's right there, even when we have failed, when we have that moment of doubt or long moments or days of doubt, but he's right there to call us back to him. So the Sea of Galilee has obviously seen countless adventures over the years, but nothing like that one. And it's the most puzzling of all, I call the miracles to me, because it didn't seem to serve a useful purpose, in the sense it didn't feed people, heal people, set them free from a demon, raise them from the dead. Even, turning water into wine met a need at a wedding. It was a need that was visible to all. But it did, again, show us who Jesus was, because when he came into that boat, and after he lifted Peter and they said the wind and the waves died down, and it said that those on the boat worshiped him and said, this is the Son of God. So sometimes Jesus shows up in ways we don't recognize, and we need to trust him. Ask him to identify himself if we're not sure this is his will or his ways. And I believe, just like he did with Peter, he'll always be willing to tell us, it's me, come to me and follow me. So just one of the highlights that I see of things we can meditate on, if you've been before or you haven't been before, as we prepare ourselves to go, we can look back at all these different scenes and kind of prepare ourselves a bit to enter into them more fully when we're right there, and let God minister to us. So thank you.
Oh, thanks so much, Janice. I've actually been on the Sea of Galilee with a group of pastors, and it was stormy. We didn't have like the huge waves, but it was quite choppy. And I remember the wind was so strong. And one of the women who were on the boat with us, one of the pastor's wives, I was trying to film a video of us, just because I wanted to show what it was really like. And we could barely even talk into the video because the wind was whipping our hair all over our faces, and it was just wild. And we couldn't really have a very worshipful or a quiet worship time because it was, you know, so rainy and noisy. And luckily, I think we all had umbrellas and our rain jackets on, but that is kind of unusual for it to be like that. So, oops, what did I do? I went backwards. So another highlight of being in Israel is that we are going to have a baptism in the Jordan River. And I'm pretty sure that all of the groups up until this past November, we have been in this area here that's shown, which is just at the very bottom of the Sea of Galilee as it feeds into the Jordan River. But they've recently, in the last few years, have opened up another spot, which was open before, but it wasn't easily accessible for groups. And it's called Khazar Al Yud. And it's the actual site that they believe where John the Baptist baptized Jesus. Because in the scripture, after Jesus was baptized by John, he went up to Jericho. And this is just right south of Jericho, right on the spot of the Jordan that would be the first spot he would see. And he would have just come out also of the Judean wilderness, and we'll see that when we're there. So it's a really interesting spot, and it's very close. As you can see, look at the spot across the river. That now that particular picture, the spot across the river is Israel, but in the spot where we're going to be farther down the Jordan, it's actually the nation of Jordan that's across the river, and it's that close. So you could actually throw a stone and say that you threw a stone in Jordan. It's kind of exciting to be there. And they actually have a baptismal site across there as well. But this was a group of women that we were talking about that went in 2018. And I would say probably 80% of the group wanted to be baptized. And so if that's something that you think you might want to do, we will gladly accommodate you. You can rent a gown, or you can just go in your t-shirt and bathing suit. Where maybe bring some water shoes in case it's gucky on the bottom, and make sure you bring an extra towel. And that's something that you'll be able to do when you're there. We laugh about this picture because this lady, Barb, her hair looked exactly the same when she went into the water as it did when she came out of the water. She just has that kind of hair that doesn't flatten down when it gets wet. So I'm not sure if she'd come out or gone back in, but this is Cheryl, and she definitely was coming back out of the water there when Kathy was baptizing her. Another highlight is really going to be a fun day for us. It's like a day at the spa, and that's going to be the day when we're at this Dead Sea. And that afternoon, as I said, we'll be able to go down right onto the shore of the Sea of the Dead Sea and get some mud. They'll have vats of mud there, and you can put the mud all over you, and then you go back in the water, wash the mud off, and just float around a bit, watch the sun go down, and it'll be just a really fun time. I think that really is an experience that gels the group after we've done that. And then, of course, a huge highlight will be being in Jerusalem. And as we drive into Jerusalem, you'll see this first look of the old city, and it's quite breathtaking and awe-inspiring when you go in there. Also, when you're in Jerusalem, in the old city, there's the market stalls, the souks, they call them, and very narrow alleyways. Some of them are covered with stone ceilings, but lots and lots of wares right there in the aisles for you to see and buy. So we'll have an opportunity for shopping as well. And while we're in the old city as well, we will be going to the Western Wall. And this is some of our group of women who were at the Western Wall. It's divided up into a men's section and a women's section. The women's section is quite a bit smaller because the men's section usually has more people at it. But you'll have an opportunity to just go up and touch that wall. And what is significant about that wall is that for many people, that's as close as they can come to the Holy of Holies. It's actually part of the foundation stones of the Temple Mount. And the Temple Mount would have been like the courtyard as well as the temple. So these foundation stones that are being touched here at the Western Wall are actually the foundation stones of the temple courtyard. And people will come there. The public is welcome to come. And sometimes people will write little prayers on pieces of paper and stick them in the cracks. And I think you can see them there. in that crack, you can see some white things, and that's what that is. And the custodians will gather every so often they gather them up and they keep them in a very special box. And those prayers are kept very, very sacred. And so it's just an act of symbolism, really. We know that God hears our prayers. We don't have to write them down and stick them in a crack in the wall. But for some people, it's just very significant that they wrote it down and left it at the wall. And another thing you're going to see a lot of is some animals that you might not see at home here, like camels, donkeys, and sheep. You'll see a lot of sheep, especially when we're in the Bethlehem area. And this is just a little lamb who was this boy's pet. And we were near the shepherd's fields. And so when we were coming out, we saw him with his lamb and said, "Oh, can we take a picture of him?" It was one of the ladies from our group getting a picture with the lamb. I think another highlight of Israel is also the people that you're going to encounter and meet. There's going to be a lot of people that you wouldn't normally see in your day-to-day life here in Canada. This gentleman is a scribe, and his job is to transcribe the scriptures. And the actual place where he is up on top of Masada. They built, there's a synagogue that's there, and it was replicated from what the Zealots had built when they were on the top of Masada. And there's a whole backstory that goes along with that, which you'll hear when we're at Masada. But at the top of this fortress of Masada, there's this synagogue, and just around the corner from the synagogue is this little office, and he sits in there all day long and transcribes scripture, and with a special pen. It's a fountain pen, and his job is to make sure that it's perfect, and if it isn't perfect, it has to be destroyed. So he's very, very meticulous. And I believe I'm not sure which group it was. It was one of Kathy Butchin's groups. I can't remember if it was the women's group or the one with Alan and Kathy, where he came out while we were there, and he was so excited because he had just finished one of the books. And I can't even remember which book of the Old Testament was, but he told our guide he had just finished the book. So it's very interesting to watch him. And also some of the people that you'll meet in the market. This is actually an Arab Christian man. People think that because they see Arabic people that they're all Muslims, but they're not. There's a lot of Arab Christians in the world and in Jerusalem. And this man has his spice stall in the Christian quarter of the old city. And I started going and buying my spice from him probably like 15 years ago. And so every time I go back, I make sure I stock up on my shakshuka spice and my the green stuff that you put on the olive oil, hyssop, zatar hyssop, and cumin, and he has like some really, really good spices. And we usually have a little chat when we're there. And this is actually him when I was there in January. So I always go and say hi to him and buy some more spices and dates. He always has really great dates. They're so fresh. So I love to give him my business when I'm there. And in fact, his brother has a spice store in the same area, and his son does as well. So they have these little shops that they run, and each of them runs a shop. Something else that you're going to see when you're in Jerusalem is the stone. Everywhere in Jerusalem, even the stores, the buildings, the office buildings, everything is made with this Jerusalem stone. And it's really interesting to see. It's beautiful white stone. Of course, it looks yellow here because it's in the evening and the lights are on it. That's at the Jaffa Gate. But here's the southern wall of the temple courts at the Hulda gates. And that's all made from Jerusalem stone. And what's interesting about those is you can see in some of the bricks and in some of those blocks actual bullet holes from when I think the 7-Day War was on. And the whole area of the gates of the city, you can actually walk on those walls. So the walls that go around the city, there's actually a walk that you can take that goes around the walls, which is really interesting to do. And not only in the walls of the city, but in some areas, you're going to see a lot of rock and rock formations. And you might recognize this picture. This is a picture of the garden tomb, and the tomb that was found there. They actually closed part of it in so that they could make a doorway, but when they first found it, it was open. You can see those blocks there where they closed it in. And this is a tomb. If it's not the tomb where Jesus was laid, it's much like the tomb would have been where Jesus was laid. And we will be visiting the garden tomb and having a time of communion there. It'll be really a special time. It's a beautiful garden. You can see a rock nearby where there's a looks like a skull in the face of the rock. And there's a wine press there. There is I mean, a cistern. They found a cistern there when they were excavating it. A lot there, but the most important thing is that tomb, and that's where here's Janice coming out of the tomb, and you will be able to say, like the women did, or the angels did, "He's not here. He's risen." And that's really exciting to have your faith affirmed that Jesus is not in the tomb. He's not in the ground. He's not in the tomb. He's not on the cross. He is risen. He's alive today. So let's just talk a little bit about the trip info and give you some information. I will say there's lots of walking every day. It's not going to be all at once, though. So somebody was asking me, oh, am I going to be walking like for 4 or 5 hours? No, not at all. As I said, a lot of the places in Israel are like a short drive away from one another. So we'll be on the coach, we'll get out and we'll walk. I would say the longest we might be walking would be an hour and a half, but that would be at a fairly slow pace. I'm thinking about some of the places like Megiddo, which is a excavation site, which is an ancient city. There will be some hill walking where we're walking up an incline. And so I would suggest that maybe you need to start now to start like going on the stairs. Always take the stairs up. And if you're on the treadmill, make sure you put it on a steep incline, the highest incline you can go, and just like practice with those kind of things. I would say also you should be able to walk up a very moderate incline, not a steep incline, but a moderate incline for 30 minutes straight. Not a fast walk, just walking, strolling. If you can do that, then you should be fine to go. And as I said, start physical training now. The weather in Israel. Okay, so we're going to be going in January. And I've been many times in January, and I will have to say that the weather is different every time I go when I go in January. So the warmest that we're going to see on the chart there under January, it says the Dead Sea is, well, this is in Celsius, by the way, 12 to 21 degrees. I would say I have been there when it's been warmer. I have never been there when it's colder than 12. In fact, I've never been there when it's 12. I would say the Dead Sea could be as warm as 25. And many times I've been there, it has been because it's warm enough to go in the water. But what I do find is in January, the Dead Sea itself is quite chilly. So we're going to really appreciate that pool water that's heated. When we're at the Sea of Galilee, that would be Tiberias. It says 9 to 18. And I would say 18 is probably, that would be accurate. What you're going to find is that you're in the mornings, it can be chilly. And then by the early afternoon, it's quite warm. So you're going to want to dress in layers, bring different layers of clothing. And there's going to be times when you're going to just want to wear a t-shirt. And, but you might want to have a jacket. And I will say, I brought one of those very lightweight puffy jackets this past January when I was there this year. And it packs up really small. So it's nice that way. But I had it on quite often until about 11 o'clock. And then I would just take it off and scrunch it up and put it in my backpack. And it's very light to carry. So it was really nice. Also, we'll be in Tel Aviv is where we're landing. So 19 degrees when we first land. That's pretty accurate. And we'll be doing a walking tour of Joppa when we first get there. Then, of course, at the top, Jerusalem, that's where we're ending off. And up to 12 degrees, I would say probably 15 degrees and 16 it got to this past January. And quite often it is. However, I will also say that I have been there once in January when it snowed in the night. And we came out in the morning and there was a covering of snow. And I'll tell you, the whole city shuts down when there's snow because they don't have the means to clear it away. So they just wait for it to melt. And it did melt. By the time we got going at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, it was pretty well melted. But it was kind of fun to see the snow coming down in Jerusalem. What is included in the tour? Well, first of all, we're gonna have somebody meet us at the airport when we land in Tel Aviv. They're going to be holding a sign with our group name. It'll say Discover Israel Women's Group, something like that. And they will make sure that we all get our luggage, and then they will take us to our coach to meet our guide. And I did mention before, we will be having a licensed Israeli guide. All the guides in Israel have to be fully licensed. They're all university educated, and most of them have their master's degree in something like archaeology, geology, history, ancient history, or biblical studies. So they're very well educated. We'll also have our transfers back to the airport from our Jerusalem hotel. We're going to be staying, so we'll have 8 nights of hotel, 3 nights in the Sea of Galilee, 1 night at the Dead Sea, and 4 nights in Jerusalem. The porterage at the hotels. This means that when we get to a hotel, when we first get to, say, the Sea of Galilee, there will be somebody there to offload our luggage for us, and they'll put a sticker on your luggage when they give you your key. And you can just go up to your room, and you might want to take your carry-on with you and go to your room, and they will bring the luggage to you. However, you're welcome to take your own bag up if you want, but we've paid for them to do that for us. So that will be done. And then same with when we're leaving a hotel. We'll just announce, okay, have your bags outside your room at 7:30 before you come down for breakfast. And then the porters will come and gather our bags up and take them to the bus. And they'll leave them outside the bus so we can identify them before they're put on the bus, so that we make sure everybody's got their bags before we leave. Also, we're including your daily buffet breakfast and your dinner at the hotel each day. Then, of course, the 7 days of touring with the English-speaking government license guide. And we will have an air-conditioned coach with a licensed driver. And quite often, I mean, pretty much, I would say for the last 10 years anyway, the coaches have Wi-Fi on the bus. So you'll be able to use the Wi-Fi, as long as we're not in an area where there's no internet to be found. But Israel is really advanced when it comes to high-tech stuff. All our entrance fees will be looked after. Wi-Fi in the bus. And then you'll also receive a passport wallet that has your name tag on it. And it'll be a really great place for you to keep money. It has zippers as well as Velcro pouches. You can keep that on and wear it as a crossbody bag. And just keep your valuables with you at all times. However, the hotel rooms do have a safe in them, but there's going to be those days when we're going from one hotel to the next. And when we get there, they will also give us some maps. So what is not included in the tour? Something that is extra would be the gratuities for the guide and the driver and the hotel staff. And what I usually suggest is it's US $150, and I like to collect it in US because they appreciate US money more than Canadian. And also what I will do is I will not collect that until after we get there, just so I have the opportunity to put it in the room safe or the hotel safe. I don't really want to get it at the airport or before then, because I don't want to be carrying everybody's gratuities. So I will collect that at some point, and I'll be dispersing it to the hotel staff as we go. But the driver and the guide will give them their gratuities at the end of the tour. Also, our lunches. That will be something that you will be responsible for. And I'm saying that you should estimate between $15 and $20 for a lunch. And it might be less. I don't think it'll ever be much more. But there's going to be some times where you might just say, you know what, I just feel like getting an ice cream for lunch and a coffee. And that's perfectly fine. If we're in a place where you can do that, that's quite fine. But then there's, like I said, other times where we will be all together and you can order off of a menu, but there's maybe some of the things are 15 and some of them are 20. So there will be a variety of meals for lunches. Also, your beverages during your meals. In the morning, they have nice cappuccino machines and coffee and tea and orange juice or other juices and water, of course. But during dinner, it's really just water that's provided. And if you want any beverages, if you want to have a glass of wine, or if you wanted a coffee with your meal even, or a soft drink, that's extra, and you could just charge that to your room. Also, anything for personal expenses, anything from souvenirs. In the evening, you might want to, like I said, go to the King David Hotel and spend $10 on a coffee. I don't know. I don't think it's that much, but the lobby there is so nice, and they have a nice coffee shop, and it's just a fun thing to do in the evening. Also, if you wanted to be baptized, that's about $15 for a little personal amenity kit, but you don't have to get one of those kits. Like I said, you could just bring an old t-shirt wear your bathing suit underneath, and be baptized that way, and bring an old towel with you. If you want to buy some ahava. Now, what is ahava, you might say? Ahava is a line of skin care that is made from the minerals of the Dead Sea and the water of the Dead Sea. And they were one of the original companies that were founded and started harvesting minerals from the Dead Sea. And they have like a whole team of scientists that are always coming up with new things that their skincare products will combat. And some of them are therapeutic, some of them are just beauty items. But one of the things that I love the most is the foot cream, and I use it as a hand cream, and I love it because it's more intense than the hand cream itself, but it doesn't really have a fragrance. And if we were together in person, I would give you a little sample of it so you could try it. But that's something that you might want to spend some money on. And although everywhere we go is going to take credit cards, the only place I would say that might not take a credit card would be some of the souks in the old market in Jerusalem. So you would want to have some cash, and you would take shekels. They would take shekels, but they also take US dollars. They're quite happy to take US dollars. They'll even take Canadian dollars. They'll just convert it, but you would probably get the best exchange rate if you have US or shekels and buy them ahead of time. I think I was going to mention one other thing that you might spend some money on. I guess it was like for pay toilets. There is one spot in a church near the top of the Mount of Olives where you can't get into the washrooms unless you have a coin. Some of them just have there's a lady attendant who is asking for money, but if you don't have any, she's not going to stop you from leaving. Sometimes they have a person standing there and you only get toilet paper if you pay for it. And then there's this one place that you actually cannot get in unless you have a coin for the toilet. And usually it's just like 3 shekels, or I don't know, 5 shekels probably. Now, this is something that always comes up, and it's safety in Israel. And what I do want to mention about safety in Israel is that we need to keep it in context. One of the things that I find is that if you watch the news a lot, which I do not, but for a lot of different reasons, I find that when there are other things going on in the world, you won't hear anything about Israel. But when there's nothing else happening, not a lot happening, you will start hearing things about Israel, about clashes between Palestinians and Israelis, or about rockets being fired. Something that you need to know is that this is a way of life for Israelis, and it will be, I think, until the end of time, because the country of Israel is a very sought after piece of property and real estate. And you've got all these different faith groups and militant political groups that want to be and want to have a part of Israel. And so there's always going to be clashes over Israel. But when you're in Israel, you don't notice it. Number one, we're not going to be in the areas where you hear about rockets being fired. We won't be near that. And then number two is it's a way of life for the people who live there, and they don't really talk about it. They don't get alarmed about it because it's just a way of life for them. But something I came across recently that I thought was really interesting is that if you look up the rate of murders or homicides, and that includes suicide bombers or terrorist attacks, the rate of murder in 2019 in Israel was 1.47 people per 100,000. And if you looked at the same rate for the same year, the US as a country had a rate of 5.07. So when you look at that context, it doesn't seem like a huge deal. However, of course, Israel is a much smaller country. So think of it this way. I mean, Mexico, we maybe would expect this because of drug cartels, but Mexico had a rate of 26.6 murders per 100,000 people. That's pretty high. But Brazil, that's something I never think of in Brazil. 23.6 they had. Oops. I would have to say that the when we were in Israel with our group of women, and that's probably what is on maybe most people's minds. What's it going to be like going as a group of women? Will we feel safe because we don't have men with us? I think the most unsafe we felt was the day we were leaving the old city, and our guide took us through the Muslim quarter because we were on our way to the Garden Tomb, and we had to go out the Damascus Gate to get to the Garden Tomb. And something that he didn't really count on was that it was Friday afternoon and the call to prayer was being given from the minarets. And when that call to prayer goes out, all the men leave their jobs, their storefronts, their homes, everything, and they make a mad exodus to get to the mosque. And we were walking along the same path that they were, along the same narrow street. And as we were walking, we were kind of walking up, and there was a few spots where there were stairs, a few like very shallow stairs to climb, and ramps for the carts. And there was like, all of a sudden, the crowd just pressed in against us. And we knew what it felt like for Jesus when he was walking along and a woman touched the hem of his garment. And he said, "Who touched me?" Like, I can imagine the disciples thinking, "What do you mean, who touched you? Everybody's pressing against you." Well, that's how we felt. Everybody was pressing against us. And I was at the front right behind the guide, and I had to hold my hand up. And the girls were saying behind me, they were saying, we were just watching your nails. We could see your French manicured nails, and we knew if we could see those, we were right behind you. So you can't even see most of the women. There's maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 women visible, but the rest of the group, there was like 20 or 25 more behind them. And that was quite an ordeal, but we made it out safe, and we were as much as we could, we were kind of hanging on to one another, and we made it out the Damascus Gate, and we kind of laughed about it because that was the least safe we felt. And it wasn't because we were in any danger, it was just because we weren't expecting such a crowd like that. But I do want to tell you about one thing, and this is a couple of the ladies that are on the call will recognize this guy on the right. His name's Dan. The guy on the left, now the guy on the left, I'm trying to think of what his name is. He was our bus driver. His name escapes me. I might have it written down here. I can't remember his name, but he was a Muslim and a Palestinian, and Dan is Jewish. And they didn't know each other before the start of the trip. And yet they became really, really good friends. And what was really interesting is that our Janice, jump right in if you can remember his name, Safti or something. Anyway, he owned a barbershop, and he had 2 sons in their 20s, and they worked in the barbershop for him. Well, while we were having some free time, Dan went into his barbershop and got his hair cut. And I think it was like that day or the day before. So they became really good friends. And this is what you will see when you go to Israel. You will see Muslims who are friends with Jews. And that's not something they show you in the news or on the media. They want to show you the clashes, and they want to show you the fighting, because that sells. That gets you all worked up and gets you wanting to see more to make sure everything's okay. But they never show you the good stories. So I want you to keep that in mind, that there are many Muslims who live right next door to Jewish people, and they get along just fine. So now is the time when we are going to have some questions. So I am going to invite you to unmute yourself. And if you have a question that you want to ask, this is the time to do it. I will gladly try to answer. Anybody want to unmute themselves?
Hello.
Hi, Val. Yes.
Are you going to Golan Heights again?
We will be driving up. So if you mean by the Golan Heights, we'll be going up to Caesarea Philippi and Tel Dan, the Tel area of Dan, and the ancient city of Dan.
Not up where you could see across the whole vista. There was an amazing place with
that's right. It depends. I guess it really depends on our timing for that day. I believe the day that we've planned, we might not have time to do it because that's the same day we're going to be driving to the Dead Sea. So that's going to be our longest drive day, because we'll be in the very top end of Jerusalem and then driving to the Dead Sea. Oh. But yeah, I guess that was the time we went to that Lebanese restaurant for lunch, and we were like, right, you could see the border.
Yeah.
We'll be very close to it. I mean,
Yeah.
we're going to be very near it when we're there.
There was also a place that we went that had a tremendous, well, they all have history, but where there was some final stand. I don't remember the name of the place. And it was a great big canyon beside it. It was right on a rocky outcrop.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so that was that. It's a national park now.
Uh-huh.
Oh, the place where the Eagles were.
Yes.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
that was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dan took us there. Actually, that's one of Dan's favorite spots. So he likes to always take a group there. A lot of school groups go there as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, and some Jewish rebels held out there in that little village. It's like the little Masada, I call it, because it's a very similar story to the Masada. I'll think of the name in a minute.
Josephus had a big part in that,
Mhm.
I think.
He wrote
That's
about it.
history there. Yeah.
Yeah.
How
Any
much?
other questions?
Yeah. How much did you say we should take along as extra cash normally?
Well, I won't tell you an amount, but I am suggesting $15 to $20 for lunches, and then a bit extra for some souvenirs or anything else. Like I always just put everything on a credit card, so I don't take a lot of extra cash.
Okay.
But I would maybe take, in addition to that, oh, and sorry, the gratuities, 150 US.
Mhm.
On top of that, I don't know, you might want to bring like $50 US. It depends on what kind of a shopper you are. If you like buying little trinket things that you wouldn't want to pay for with a credit card or what. Really, it really all depends on you. The other thing that I was going to mention, I knew that there was something else I wanted to say with what's not included. Something that I like to ask my groups to do is to just be thinking about it, maybe just even between now and January. Think about what you could bring as a gift for the guide or the driver. And at this point in time, we don't even know who our guide is, and we don't know we won't even know who our driver is until we get there. But I will try and find out if they have kids. And probably a couple months before we will know our guide. But if you can just be thinking of something you might want to bring from home that's like, like Canadian, like maple syrup, or something that a type of chocolate bar they can't get there, or something that might maybe for their kids that they wouldn't find in Israel, but they'd find in Canada. Something that just speaks to them about your home that is just a thank you gift to them. Sometimes you might want to say, hey, here, this is for your wife. It's a package of napkins, like paper napkins, like something that would be what you would bring as a hostess gift. And what we'll do is maybe on the second or third night, we'll gather together. Excuse me. My voice is giving out. We'll gather together and we'll give them the gifts. And what I find is that it's a really great way to just endear them to us, because it just blows them away when they think that we were thinking of them. And as you're thinking about a gift, be praying for them too. Mm-hmm. For them to know that we were praying for them and thinking of them before we came. I just find that whenever we've done that as a group, it just solidifies the group, and the guide and the driver just love us. I can't think of any other way to say it, but whenever I've done it, it makes such a difference in how the guide and the driver interact with us and respond to us. So that's something that you can be thinking of. It's very small. Just bring some only one thing it needs to be. It doesn't have to be for both of them, just for one of them. But we'll gather them together and I'll put them in some gift bags and we can just have a nice time with them as they open them. And if it's something that you need to explain to them, I mean, I think there was a man, remember Olive and Valerie, there was that man who brought a Canadian coin. It was from his coin collection. He brought it not even knowing that Dan is a coin collector. Our guide is a coin collector. And so Dan was blown away by the fact this man would give him this coin. And I just thought that was really a neat God thing that that man thought of bringing him a coin.
Where I live. Hello.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Where I live, it's a huge indigenous population.
Yes. Yeah.
That would be something to just something because we're very indigenous in BC, which was more than I encountered when I lived in Ontario. It's everywhere.
Yeah, that would be really something because it would tell them.
Because this is heritage, Canadian
Yep.
heritage. Yeah.
That's good thinking. You were thinking outside the box. That's giving them something that's part of our heritage. I think that's really nice. That's why I'm mentioning it now, because between now and then you have lots of time to think about it. I'm trying not to leave it to the last minute to say something, but I will remind everybody again. Any other questions before I stop the recording?
One more.
Yes.
Deposit is due how much and when?
Oh my goodness, Val. You got me there. Well, you don't. I'm going to look it up, but you all know that there's a website, right? And it tells us where it's due. But the final payment I know is deposit is the amount of the deposit is $900, and that's due to book your spot. And then the balance is due on November 15th. So you've got lots of time to save up your pennies.
Pennies.
What was the dates again?
The dates are January 21st to the 30th.
Just after my birthday.
Oh, well, we'll have a party.
Oh, well. I had a terrible time getting through customs, Tel Aviv, going back.
Why? What were you trying to smuggle, Olive?
Well, first of all, they gave us a Hebrew Bible.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So we had to declare that. Well, they didn't like that. And I had a few issues. And then of course I had to go through when I always have to go through where the bells and whistles go off because of my hip replacement.
Oh, right, yeah.
But then they went, my bra, my wired bra, it took off, it rang a bell as well, and I had to be interviewed. Oh my goodness, it was quite something else. Yeah.
Anything that's a shape that looks like it could fit a weapon, like that's why they were checking the Bible.
Yeah.
Not your bra, I don't mean your bra, but the Bible, because we bought an olive wood covered Bible when we were there one time, and Stan had it in his suitcase, and he got pulled aside after it went through, because all of your checked bags have to go through a scanner as well as your carry-on, and he got pulled aside too, and they went through it until they found that Bible, and then they leafed through it to make sure that that's what it really was.
I know, it's unbelievable, but anyway.
Okay, well, I'm going to stop the recording. And I will say, if you go to www.wiredfortravel.com, then just scroll down a little ways. There's a kind of a moving strip, and you'll see the Israel trip there. If you click on that, it'll give you all the details that you need to know. And I'm going to be posting the recording of this video on there as well.